The sky was turning gray when Seth and Dane Wilder parked their car outside the small town of Bellwood. The wind blew softly, carrying the smell of wet leaves and something else, something old. They had been on the road for hours. Seth stared at the trees, quiet. Dane was the first to speak. "You hear that?" Dane asked, his eyes narrowing. Seth turned off the engine. For a moment, they both sat in silence. Then they heard it, a soft sound, almost like a hum. It came from the woods. "Is that singing?" Seth whispered. Dane nodded slowly. A child's voice. They followed the sound through the trees. Birds flew away as they stepped on fallen branches. The deeper they went, the louder the voice became. It was singing a lullaby, old, slow, and sad. After a few minutes, they reached a clearing. In the middle of it stood an old well made of stones. Moss covered the sides. The voice was coming from inside. Seth walked up to the edge and looked down. Nothing but darkness. Dane leaned in. "Hello," he called. The singing stopped. Then a new sound rose up, a whisper. It wasn't clear, but it felt like words. Seth stepped back. "That's not just a voice. That's a memory." Dane frowned. "What kind of memory sings?" They returned to town and checked into a motel. That night, Seth sat at the desk with his laptop. He typed Bellwood Well Child singing. He found nothing at first. Then, buried in an old newspaper scan, he saw a headline, "Tragedy at Bellwood School, 6 children lost in fire." He clicked. The article was from 1963. The school had caught fire during a winter storm. The fire spread fast. 6 children never made out. One of them was a girl named Annabeth Wilder. Seth's eyes widened. "Wilder," he whispered. "That's our name." He showed Dane. "Could be a relative," Dane said. "Or not. But if her spirit is stuck there." They needed answers. The next morning, they visited the Bellwood Town Hall. It smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. A kind old man helped them find the school's location. "It's just rubble now," the man said. "Burned down good. Some folks say they still hear kids laughing near the woods." "Anyone ever hear singing?" Seth asked. The man hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. Soft. From the well. My sister used to say it was Annabeth. Said she loved to sing." Seth and Dane thanked him and left. They returned to the clearing. The well was still there. The wind was stronger now. Leaves flew in circles. The voice had returned. The same song. Seth knelt by the well. "Annabeth," he called. The singing stopped. A soft voice answered, "Who's there?" Seth's heart raced. "My name is Seth. I think we're family." Silence. Then, "You came back." Dane stepped forward. "We want to help." The well shook slightly. A cold air rose from it. The trees rustled louder. "I'm stuck," the voice said. "He won't let me go." "Who?" Seth asked. But the voice faded. That night, back at the motel, Seth flipped through an old book he'd borrowed from the town hall. It mentioned a strange man who used to visit the school. A man named Corwin Mallory. A performer. He was known for his magic shows, but people said he believed in real power. Dane read over his shoulder. "You think he had something to do with the fire?" Seth nodded. He called one of his shows the Ascension Spiral. Said it could separate the soul from the body. He disappeared the same year the fire happened. Dane frowned. "And now a little girl is trapped in that well." Seth closed the book. "We're not leaving until we free her." The next day they gathered tools, chalk, candles, salt. Things that could help them perform a safe ritual. As the sun set, they returned to the well. The voice was waiting. The next morning, Seth woke up early. The sky outside was cloudy, and the air felt heavy. He sat on the edge of the motel bed, still thinking about the voice in the well. He could hear it in his head, the soft tune the little girl had sung. Something about it felt personal. Like a memory he never lived but somehow knew. Dane came out of the bathroom, drying his hair. "She said someone was holding her there," he said. "Did you sleep at all?" "Barely," Seth replied. "I kept thinking about that name, Corwin Mallory. If he's the one who caused this, we need to find out more." They packed their bags and headed back to the town hall. It was quiet inside, with only the clerk from yesterday on duty. Seth asked for more information about Corwin Mallory. The clerk raised an eyebrow. "That's a name I haven't heard in years. Some folks used to say he was a magician, but others, they thought he was a little too serious about the dark arts." "Do you have any files on him?" Seth asked. The clerk nodded and led them to the basement records. They dug through boxes until Dane found a yellow folder labeled C. Mallory, 1960 to 63. Inside were old photos, posters from his shows, and newspaper clippings. One article mentioned complaints from parents who said their children came home scared after his performances. "Listen to this," Dane said. Children claim Mallory showed them a mirror that moved on its own. Some refused to sleep for days afterward. "Maybe he was using something real," Seth said. "Something he didn't fully control." The last paper in the folder was a handwritten letter. It was from the principal of Bellwood School to the town council. It warned that Mallory's shows were disturbing the children and suggested banning him from school events. The letter was dated 2 weeks before the fire. "That can't be a coincidence," Seth said. They took photos of the documents and left. Back at the motel, Seth connected the dots. He was obsessed with something called the ascension spiral. That's what the letter said. And Annabeth's voice said, "He won't let me go." What if Mallory tried to use her for his ritual? "You think her soul got caught in whatever he was doing?" Dane asked. Seth nodded. "Exactly. And if he trapped her, maybe the well is where the ritual ended or went wrong." That evening, they went to the local library. It was small, but one shelf had books on folklore and local legends. Seth found one with stories about the Bellwood area. Near the back, there was a chapter about strange events in 1963. One paragraph stood out. After the fire, several townspeople reported hearing music in the woods. Some said it was a girl's voice. Others saw shadows moving on their own. "That matches everything," Seth whispered. "It started after the fire, just like the singing." They photocopied the page and left. That night, they returned to the well with flashlights and the items they gathered for protection: a ring of salt, iron nails, and a mirror they had etched with a protection symbol. As they reached the clearing, the air turned cold. A thick mist rolled across the ground. The singing began again, clearer this time. "Lullaby, hush now, night will fall. Angels guard you one and all." Seth's eyes watered. The voice sounded close, like the girl was right there. "Annabeth," he said softly, stepping toward the well. "We're here to help." The voice stopped. Then a whisper, "He's angry." "Is it Mallory?" Dane asked. A low groan came from the well, followed by a wind that whipped through the trees. The fire they lit inside the salt ring flickered. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the clearing, but there was no body, just darkness floating through the air. "Don't step outside the circle," Seth warned. From inside the well, another voice emerged. This one was deeper, meaner. "She is mine. She sang for me. She opened the way." Seth held up the mirror. The shadow hissed and backed away. "We know what you did," Dane said, voice steady. "You tried to rip her soul out. You failed. And now, we're here to finish what you started." More wind, louder now. Leaves swirled around them, but the salt ring held. The candles stayed lit. The shadow screeched, a sound like metal scraping. Seth took a deep breath and began to speak the words from the ritual they had prepared. Simple, strong words meant to break ties. "Let go. Release the bound. Return the lost." The shadow screamed. The ground shook. Inside the well, the little girl cried out, "Help me." "Keep going." Dane shouted. Seth repeated the words. The shadow twisted like smoke. Then it was gone. Silence. The wind stopped. The air was still. And then, from the well, a soft voice, "Thank you." They looked at each other. "She's free," Dane said. Seth nodded slowly, his eyes filled with tears. "She's really free." But as they turned to leave, they didn't notice the small figure standing at the edge of the trees. Watching. Waiting. The morning light peeked through thin gray clouds, painting everything in soft shades of blue and gold. Seth and Dane sat at a small diner, picking at plates of eggs and toast. Neither said much. The voice in the well, the way the wind howled, the shadow that vanished, it all sat heavy in the air. Seth took a sip of coffee and looked out the window. Her voice, it's still in my head. That melody, it won't leave. Dane nodded slowly. It's like it wants to be remembered. They knew the job wasn't finished. Annabeth might be free, but something darker had been disturbed. Seth pulled out his notebook. The letter from the principal mentioned Mallory used symbols from an old book, something called the Black Veil Codex. Ever heard of it? Dane shook his head. Sounds like trouble. They made their way to the Historical Society. The building looked like a giant dollhouse, painted white with green trim and a sagging porch. Inside, an old man greeted them. His name was Mr. Fenley. He wore thick glasses and moved slowly, but his mind was sharp. "We're looking for information on a book," Seth said. "Something local, called the Black Veil Codex." Mr. Fenley raised his eyebrows. "Now, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Dangerous stuff. My grandfather said it was used by a man who thought he could speak with the dead." Seth and Dane exchanged glances. Mr. Fenley pointed to a locked cabinet. "It's not for public viewing, but you boys look like you know what you're doing. I'll let you take a look." The book was thick, with cracked leather and a strange symbol etched in silver. Inside were pages filled with hand-drawn circles, odd markings, and phrases written in Latin and Old English. But one page had a picture, a spiral made of music notes, with a child's figure drawn in the center. "The Ascension Spiral," Seth read aloud. "It's more than just a symbol. It's a song." He traced the notes with his finger. It matched the melody Annabeth sang. They copied the page and left. At the motel, Dane laid the copied page on the table. If this spiral is tied to the song, then maybe it wasn't just a trap, it was a key. Mallory needed a voice, pure and strong, to unlock it. Seth nodded, and Annabeth's voice was the key. Suddenly their phones buzzed. It was an email alert from a folklore forum Seth had posted on. A user named Shadewalker63 had replied, "I saw your post about Bellwood. I know about the well. If you're serious, meet me at the old greenhouse behind Bellwood School. Midnight. Come alone." They debated going, but in the end, they couldn't ignore the lead. That night, Seth approached the greenhouse alone, while Dane waited nearby in the Impala with the shotgun ready. The glass was cracked, and weeds grew wild inside. A figure stepped out of the shadows, a woman in her late 50s, wearing a dark hoodie and fingerless gloves. "You Seth?" she asked. "Yeah." "I'm Nora. My sister was one of the kids who went to Mallory's show. She never talked again after that day. Just hummed that same tune over and over." Seth's eyes widened. "The lullaby?" "Yes. Mallory used that tune in his act. Said it would lift the soul. He was trying to break some kind of wall between life and death." "Do you know how?" Seth asked. Nora pulled out a notebook. Inside were drawings from her sister. Spirals, wells, shadows, and one chilling image. Mallory standing with his arms raised, surrounded by floating figures of children. "He trapped their voices," she whispered. "Used them like keys." But the well fought back. Seth thanked her and left. Back in the car, he showed everything to Dane. "So the well wasn't just a prison," Dane said. "It was a lock. Mallory tried to open it, and it shut on him instead." Seth looked down at the spiral again. "But it's still open. A crack, maybe. Just enough to let something slip through." They knew what came next. The spiral had to be closed completely. The final ritual needed more than just words. It needed a countersong, sung at the well, at midnight, with the spiral broken. They prepared everything. A music box tuned to the reversed melody, a shard of the mirror from the protection circle, and a locket with Annabeth's name scratched into it. They stood by the well under a full moon. The air was quiet. Seth opened the music box. It played slowly backwards. Dane placed the mirror shard on the edge of the well. It reflected nothing. Then the wind picked up. Shadows moved through the trees. A voice hissed, "You don't belong here." Seth stepped forward. Neither did she. The melody grew louder, and the well began to hum. Inside, a light started to glow, faint and soft. The ritual had begun, and the shadows came crawling. The wind howled louder now, cutting through the trees like knives. Seth gripped the music box tighter, knuckles white, while Dane crouched low, trying to shield the flame of their only lantern. Something cold brushed Seth's arm. He turned, but nothing was there. Then the ground cracked. A black mist burst from the well and wrapped around Dane's legs, yanking him downward. He shouted as he fought it, but it pulled harder. "Dane!" Seth grabbed his brother's hand, trying to hold on. The music box fell. The reversed melody stopped. Everything went still for half a second. Then all hell broke loose. The well exploded in a pillar of dark fire. Screams, not just one, but many, rushed up from its depths. Dozens of voices. Children, women, men, all twisted in pain. The spiral page caught fire in Seth's coat. He threw it off just as it burst. Dane kicked at the tendrils, wrapping his legs. "I can't break it." Seth reached into his bag, pulling out the charm the girl in the house had left behind. It pulsed in his hand. He slammed it against the mist. For a second it worked. Dane was free. But only for a second. The mist recoiled, then came back twice as strong. It threw both of them into the trees. Seth hit a trunk hard. His vision blurred. He looked up and saw the well. It wasn't a well anymore. A shape was crawling out. Long limbs, stitched from shadow and bone. Its head was bent sideways, face blank, but with eyes that dripped black tears. "Who dares sing the silence undone?" it asked. The voice was like knives in the ear. Seth tried to crawl. Dane was already stumbling to his feet, bleeding from a forehead. "We do," Dane coughed. "And we'll end this." The creature hissed. "You already have. Just not in the way you hoped." It lifted a hand, and the trees around them bent inward. Roots rose, snaking around their feet. Seth screamed as one pierced his leg. Dane grabbed him, dragging him back. He lit the last flare. "Now!" Dane shouted, and threw the flare into the creature's chest. It roared. The light cut through it, but didn't die. Instead, it split into 4 smaller forms, children-shaped, but hollow-eyed and screaming. One lunged at Seth. Darkness took him. He woke up hours later, or maybe days. The sun was rising. Dane was beside him, bruised, barely breathing. The well was gone, but so were their voices. When they tried to speak, nothing came out. They staggered to the car. In the rearview mirror, Seth saw a message carved into the glass. "You stopped the song, but the silence sings now." As they drove away, something followed behind. Not in the trees. In the shadows beneath their feet. Days passed. Seth and Dane Wilder had lost their voices in the ritual at the well. They could still hear, still breathe, still think, but not a single sound would come from their mouths. It was like something had sealed off their words, swallowed their voices whole. Worse yet, they could still feel the thing that had taken them. Somewhere out there, in the quiet corners of the world, it still waited. They stayed in a small cabin miles outside Bellwood. Dane kept a journal, scribbling their thoughts, while Seth drew protection sigils on every wall. But at night, the silence was louder than ever. One evening, Seth found an old note tucked inside a book he had taken from the library in Black Hollow. The book was about old Appalachian rituals, and the note wasn't printed. It was handwritten in fading ink. "The silence that follows a cursed song can only be broken where true voices first rose. Speak where your words were once pure, and you may take them back." Seth showed it to Dane. They looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. Annabeth's well was gone, but the school remained. And that's where the song had first been sung. That night, they returned to Bellwood under a cloudy sky. The school stood dark and still. No music, no wind. Just the creak of the metal gate, as they slipped in. They went straight to the back of the school, where the well had once been. The grass had regrown. There was no trace of it, except one thing. A single stone, half buried in the earth. Dane knelt and brushed the dirt away. It was carved faintly with a symbol, 2 spirals overlapping, like sound waves meeting. Seth took out the old music box. It still worked, but barely. The tune was slow, broken. He placed it on the stone. Then, without a word, the brothers knelt on either side of the stone and closed their eyes. They tried to speak. At first, nothing came. Just a dry ache in their throats. Then Dane whispered, "Annabeth." A wind stirred. Seth gasped and said, "Help us." The air around the stone shimmered. Light rose from the spirals, soft and white. It spread across the ground, washing over them. They felt a pressure in their chests, then a sudden snap, like glass breaking. They coughed. And then, Dane spoke. "Seth." Seth choked. I can talk." Their voices were back. The air shifted again. And from behind them, a soft voice said, "You kept your promise." They turned. There stood Annabeth. She was no longer a shadow, no longer lost. Her form glowed faintly in the moonlight, transparent, but smiling. "You helped me," she said, her voice like wind chimes. "Now I help you." She pointed into the distance, toward the woods behind the school. "There's more. Others still trapped. He's not gone. Just hiding." Seth and Dane exchanged a glance. Dane nodded. "Then we find them." Annabeth gave a small, sad smile. "Be careful. The songs are changing." She began to fade, her light drifting upward like fireflies. Seth whispered, "Thank you." The glow faded completely. The brothers stood in silence for a moment, then turned toward their car. The road ahead was dark. But now they had their voices and a new path. Their journey wasn't over. It was just beginning.